and just sort of talk through what we have or haven't done, if that's of interest to the group.
Sure,
But I
that
think Nick,
sounds good, Henry. I found out about this. I mean, I generally keep a watch for office hours on Fridays because I'm interested in the topics that come up. Last week's was terrific and very helpful for me. So I mean, the organization sent out an email and I put it on the calendar.
All right, good to know. Member Services is working on like a list of topics to cover in these, and so we'll have a little more. We'll be able to announce a little more in advance what's coming up. But also, if you have suggestions for topics, please drop into the chat.
So was there a meeting last Friday at 1 o'clock?
I believe that was the policy check-in, and then the week prior was the poverty plains.
Because I logged into something and then I got told that it got canceled. So I'm having some disconnect on my calendar on when meetings happen and what they are. So I missed the one last week.
No, you're right. You're right. Last week there was nothing. It was on my calendar, but
Yeah.
no one ever showed up. Yeah.
That was the legislative check-in. It wasn't. It was. It was scheduled for an extra day on the calendar, so I'm working on cleaning that up. The next legislative check-in will be next Thursday, though, and that is on the public calendar. It's the 17th, 2 to 2:30.
So I I think one of the challenges is we're getting invitations from different sources, and some of them are Teams, and some of them are other websites. So I maybe just clarifying when meetings are and what the connections are, so we can clean up our calendars. It's a small thing, but would be helpful.
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to agree with Carol. I was kind of confused. I had gotten one email canceling a meeting, and then shortly after getting another email, and I wasn't sure if we're talking about the same meeting or not.
Well, thank you. Well, what I'm trying to do is directly invite people to the Outlook event calendar invite, and I think I messed it up earlier this week. But that would, if that's most helpful way to find out about these versus us sending out like an email announcing it at the beginning of the week, please let me know.
I've been adding data to my other calendar, which is easier for me to follow. And sometimes it's a bit of a hunt to get the web connection for the meeting. That's all. So sometimes we get emails with those embedded into the email, and that's really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll sort this out.
Henry,
Okay.
I appreciate you holding these and making yourself available for questions. I'm assuming things have been really busy for you, and interested in the transition and how we can support you through that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Carol. I think it's really important to have a forum and a structure where we can more regularly engage with the members. And, I used to be sort of, when we were smaller, I was talking to all the different members and going around the state a lot more. And, we've grown so much, and we've got Jackson and Andrew and Nick and others. So I think this is a good forum for that. I'd be very pleased to sort of try to summarize the status of the transition and, I suppose, recovery plan or action plan, and answer any questions. And the way I'm thinking about doing that is pulling up our February 6th action plan and talking through it and how things have what we've gotten through, what we haven't gotten through. This isn't like a new presentation. It's just a reflection of that original document. So I could do that if there's interest. I'll go ahead and pull it up. So, just at a high level, my Zoom screen here. At a high level, this was a collaborative effort by all the staff to put together sort of a clarification of our organizational structure and roles and an action plan for the period that we're in, for continuity and to strengthen member confidence. And just reiterating for folks that this is an interesting business model. We're a nonprofit. We're an instrument of public, cities and towns, but we sort of operate like a large commercial enterprise. And the structure is that we have a small number of staff that oversee the contractors in various different areas, while also supporting the committee work. And so just to kind of lay that out, we've got Bobby Joe is the director of administration. We have 5 sort of departments: member services, power resources, projects, programs, and regulatory legislative affairs. I think we're all familiar with this, but I'll sort of talk through the action plan according to these different departments and what they do. And this just being sort of a picture of that, where, on the administrative side, there's, accounting and banking and some of the IT support, and of course, all of the, the things that go into HR and other areas. Member services team, which this is a dated document, but Jackson is now the director of member services. He has a couple of direct reports, being Andrew Hatch, who is our engagement manager, you all know, Nick Gosling, of course, on the communications side, and then Madeline Bradley, who's communications coordinator, supporting Nick's work and broadly more work of the department and the organization. But also within member services, we have retail data and customer service. So Calpine, we meet with them every Tuesday. There's 15 different Calpine employees on the call. They have customer service folks, they have data management folks, they have billing folks that are interacting with utility data exchange, collecting revenues and or monitoring the collection of revenues and invoicing from the utility companies and some of the cash flow and retail data side. So there's all of that. Andrew Provenchers and Main Street Strategic is supporting on sort of media engagement as a press officer and some printing and mailing vendors. So that all kind of lives within member services. Power resources, we didn't have previously, but part of this action plan was to really clarify that there is a power resources department. Scott May, as our senior energy analyst, is doing a lot of the staff work on that side, but we're heavily reliant as an organization on external contractors and consultants. That's Ascend Analytics. I have Dave McGanty listed here, but really over the past 2 months, Dave McGanty, Orlando Villar, Carlos Blanco, these are our front and middle office. They do the load forecasting. They issue requests for offer solicitations where different wholesale suppliers will bid to sell us power and advise on entering into those contracts. A lot of analysis, a lot of risk management, and that's sort of the role of the portfolio manager. And we have, I suppose, limited internal staff capacity in that regard. Similarly, we have on the Calpine side, Drake Welsh is the vice president there, and Calpine plays this other role in addition to the retail data management, which is our load serving entity or our market participant or our supplier. They're registered in the wholesale market. They are paying for wholesale power weekly. They're invoicing us for wholesale power. CPCNH spends about $3 million a week on wholesale power costs, and receives about $3 million a week in revenue at present. And we're buying that power through Calpine from this diversity of different sellers in the market. But they're sort of our gateway to the wholesale market. And then I have Samuel Golding here. He's, really playing some critical supporting roles in the power resources side, particularly during this transition period. I'll sort of get into the ways in which he's taking a leading role in, directing some of the restructuring of load forecasting and then developing a comprehensive cash flow analysis to inform sort of our future financials and how we move through the remainder of the year and the coming years to get our legs back under us from some of the reserve drawdowns of this winter. Project and programs, Mark Bollinger, you all know him and the good work that's happening there. most currently with Poverty Plains, which I will talk about. Same as playing some supporting role in sort of policy analysis as it relates to that project. And then, of course, regulatory legislative affairs. We know Dina, and she's supported by regulatory attorneys and some government affairs folks as well. So that's just the big picture. And what I'm going to do now is going to go into sort of what are the actions of this department's, unless anyone wants to chime in with a comment or question. Maybe I'll keep going.
I've got a quick comment, Henry, on that as well. I just, for the folks on the call, this will be included as the part of the MOEC section of the board packet coming up. But in my most recent staff report to MOEC, there's a bit more clarification on the roles of the different staff within the member services department. So I'd encourage folks to check that out if you're interested in reading some more of those details. And just to let everyone know that I'm going to try to keep up with doing a staff report on a monthly basis for MOEC, but that will obviously go to the full board as well to, summarize the activities of the member services department on a month-to-month basis.
Jackson, maybe you can even drop a link to that in the chat if there is one, or if
Sure.
there's that packet has been put in the meetings materials folder.
Great.
So just moving through this, we described sort of the structure of the organization. We're not siloed here. We collaborate across the different departments very closely. Projects and programs and power resources collaborating. Member services is marketing the Poverty Plains Group Net Metering project, supporting communications of regulatory and legislative. I could go on and on, but the idea is to facilitate and ensure that there's a lot of cross-departmental collaboration and support. The board, through this action plan, they've appointed myself as the acting general manager, at least on an interim basis. And then I sort of mentioned this sort of reorganization of the power resources department to clarify some of the work Scott is doing there. And the reorganization of the member services department and Jackson's promotion. We have a recommendation here to hire a director of finance. This is sort of in process. There's been a job description that's been discussed by the executive committee and today by the executive leadership search committee. So ongoing discussion about hiring priorities. And let's see. I won't necessarily, just at a quick level, like at an operational picture, like for staff and personnel and contractors, we have weekly standing meetings on, accounting or member services, or meeting with Calpine on Tuesday afternoons. Power Resources has a standing call. There tends to, just to give you a picture of some of the structure. And then, of course, the regular committee meetings on a monthly basis. I don't know that I need to go further into detail, but generally there's a monthly committee meeting. It has a roughly standing schedule. Each committee is supported by a staff person. And again, I think there are some, we're looking forward to filling some remaining staffing gaps, including board and executive assistant, or board clerk and executive assistant type role. So really to manage the ministerial work of maintaining all of these committees. That is pending, and that has been, it's not an enterprise risk priority, but it is a staff priority to ensure that we can all sort of be efficient in our work. So moving on to some of the sort of action plan. This is, organized by the departments and, power resources and enterprise risk management compliance, and agency evolution is a big one. The board has, engaged with Samuel Golding to do a number of areas under a task order 4 in this regard. And there's sort of, the first one is really focused on the risk management compliance and the mechanics. So at a high level, what has been set in motion over the past couple of weeks with regard to this action plan has been the bringing up to revamping our wholesale load forecasting to ensure that it is adequate to support the organization. Prior to the last couple of weeks, we had been conducting load forecasting with less than optimal data flows. So Calpine, who collects all of the retail customer historical energy usage data, and capacity tag data. These are the building block data sources that we get on an ongoing basis to inform the load forecast. We hadn't structured the obtaining of that data, loading it into our customer relationship management systems, and relaying it on an ongoing regular basis to Ascend Analytics to then ingest into their load forecast model to make really good informed purchasing decisions. That sort of structural business process is in good process. All that data is being collected and the systems are being put in place to ensure good load forecasting. So that's a major area here. Data flows, linkages. And the other major area of work, and if anybody is interested to coming to risk management on Monday at 10 a.m., we will have a very detailed presentation of CPCNH's cash position and forecasted cash flow for the remainder of 2025 and on through 2026 and 2027. I don't want to step on that too much, but the long and short of it might be, CPCNH is in a position where we have, expended a good deal of our financial reserves this winter, being exposed to some of the high price market, and are managing our liquidity and our payments for energy and some other required payments, such as renewable energy certificates, in close collaboration with our partners at Calpine and otherwise. And I would encourage folks to come to the risk management committee meeting on Monday if they're interested in really getting into the weeds on that. But there's also good clarity in having the detailed analysis of our revenues, costs, forecasts out into the future to understand some expectations about rate setting over the next 3 to 5 rate periods, and to understand the pathway to get back towards the reserve targets. And then the sort of broader strategic evolution of the agency being obtain, sufficient healthy reserve targets. From there, diversify our counterparties. So we're not, reliant on just Calpine to buy power in the wholesale market. We have multiple sellers of power that we're contracting with. Self-registering in the wholesale market as the load serving entity. So we're actually the participant with ISO New England, and we can reduce financing costs and be more self-sufficient in doing that. And then eventually obtaining a credit rating. And this is all sort of the pathway towards where we're going, which is financing construction of power generation assets in our communities to supply the customer base in a way that's cost effective and sort of gives us that energy independence. So there's a clear sort of financial runway to that.
Can I interrupt you for a second? I can't figure out how to raise my hand. But I've been wondering since, we ran into these troubles, whether there was any expectation that Ascend Analytics should have advised us that we didn't have the correct data flows in place for them to make accurate forecasts, or was there any negligence there? Or if you could comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
So your second question, I would say no. And to more broadly your question, I would say it's perhaps complicated. And I am reluctant to spend a lot of time on who did or didn't do what when previously. And I am more interested in focusing on what are the ways we can improve the business processes and solve problems and ensure that the right systems are in place moving forward. I can say that from my work with Ascend over the past 4 to 8 weeks, I'm very appreciative of the work that they're doing. They're very professional and competent. They've been supporting the cash flow work, the load forecasting, valuations of the 5 megawatt solar power purchase agreement we are entertaining, and they play a key role for the organization.
Yeah, no, the only reason I bring that up is that if we should have been aware of some of these things that we weren't, we really don't have any way now to know whether we're still unaware of certain factors that we should be taking into account. That's the only thing I'm thinking of.
I think it's a fair point, and I think we've learned a great deal in the past 8 weeks about what was or wasn't in place, and perhaps even longer time horizon. So I think we do have good clarity. And again, I think part of my role is ensuring like the horizontal and vertical clarity and flow of information. So there's not a bottleneck where we have lots of folks aware of some of the business processes or challenges we might face, and deliberating how do we fix them and make the solution. So I think it'll get towards sort of the transparency aspect, but having visibility into things in a culture where anyone can comment, I think is key to ensuring we don't fall into those pitfalls.
Okay, thanks.
So moving through this, let's see. So I talked about this. This is the sort of we got to get the cash flow analysis so we can understand how to manage liquidity in 2025, so we can generate reserves into 2026 and 2027, so we can evolve the agency into a robust power agency that can be a platform to finance and develop energy assets and otherwise create value for customers. So that's like we're getting clarity of strategy to that, and the first steps are some of the cash flow and work product that's occurring there. And there's also been CPCNH has filed testimony in the Eversource stranded cost recovery case. So this is the case in which Eversource has proposed charging $7 million in supply losses to delivery charges, which would be anti-competitive and counter to just sort of rate-making principles. And CPCNH has filed some very good testimony in that docket, and rebuttal testimony. And the latest news is, as of yesterday or the day before, Eversource had prior said, hey, that $6.5 million we lost, that's because community power was launching. And we were like, that doesn't make sense. You lost most of that before community power launched. Why are you saying that? And the testimony in the regulatory process has revealed that actually it is flaws in Eversource's billing system and load settlement system that have caused the $6.5 million loss. Nothing to do with the launch of community power. And that's been sort of clearly documented in the testimony in that case. So I think that's an interesting recent development. I am gaining confidence that CPCNH will prevail on not allowing for anti-competitive shifting of utility supply costs onto our customers in the form of delivery or stranded cost rates. It is a black and white issue from a policy perspective. And I think that the efforts of CPCNH in that docket and at the legislature and everything that Dina is doing and her team is going to have positive results. Member services. So the main action plan for member services has been communications. So we want to demonstrate transparency, ability to act quickly to address challenges, and have clarity and a good direction for the organization. And I think the team has been doing a very good job in this regard. And we have this, exciting and inspiring vision, and we're member governed, and we're really for the communities. And I think that's something to remind us all of. I see Joe has his hand up.
Yeah, on that, no, nothing. On that Eversource billing issue, is that documented somewhere that I can pass that on to the select board?
That's a great question. I'd like for us to develop that. And I don't know that we have it at this moment, but we will do that. And I know that Dina's team, and supported by some of the communications folks, are working on creating a summary of some of those longer form technical regulatory filings to get the salient points available to folks. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that would be appreciated if you got, once you have that ready. I don't want to go off and say stuff that, I really can't support.
Yeah, we'll get that in writing and some sort of article.
Excellent, thanks.
And then, so anyway, there's been a lot of effort here on the communications front. We've published, our, just as one example, the leadership transition and FAQs, and just Jackson and Andrew and the team are doing a lot of, one-off touch points with all the different members, and we're answering questions, responding to some requests for information, and questions of our members. Just this Tuesday, I presented to the Hudson Board of Selectmen, and we had a really good dialogue there, as they're interested in better understanding, CPCNH's transition. So, ongoing, and I think great progress on sort of our communications efforts. I won't go through all of this, but again, there's like individual work plans within the member services department in the different areas, but perhaps a little too far in the details. But anyway, Madeline, Nick, Andrew, Jackson, they each have, responsibilities and are working together on a number of different projects.
And again, that's a place I guess I'd refer to the staff report I mentioned earlier, because there just have been some updates in our department since this was put together.
Yes. Yeah, we're looking back at a 2-month-old document. A lot has changed, but I think we can see some
Yeah,
of the,
exactly. Yep.
And again, just on the communications front, like having Nick on board and having our new news page of the website, really encourage folks to look at that. It's a great one-stop shop for all the information, as well as just, the quarter CPCNH quarterly or Community Power quarterly newsletter, things of that nature. Administration, so improve accessibility, and Bobby Joe and other with support of other folks have been doing a great job of working through this aspect of the action plan. So enhancing our transparency and accessibility to strengthen the members' experience. And I'll just actually go over to key documents. So everybody who's a member should be really familiar with this page. If you go to CPCNH, you go to About Us. Is my screen sharing? Okay, good.
Yes.
You go to key documents. This has been restructured. And I think there's a lot more material, but what I would direct you to is down here in the folder structure, board and committees, minutes, recordings, and materials. And then we have all of the committees and the board, the member meetings. And if you go into one of these, there will be a folder for every date of a meeting. So I want to look at the, February 4th MOEC meeting, and I can find their meeting materials. I like to open link in new tab. And then you can see here's the minutes, the draft minutes that were considered, what were all of the materials that were reviewed by this committee, etc. So also recordings are posted for meetings that are recorded. So there's been a lot more information made it accessible through the key documents space, which I think is key and been helpful. And then
Joe's got his hand up. Joe, I don't know if you want to chime in on that quickly.
Yeah, do we have a public document out there somewhere that lists all the towns and who the primary, alternate, and the executive members are?
I don't know that we have an internal document, but I think that could be a great resource. We have what we call the CPCNH roster, which is sort of an internal communication spreadsheet that staff use. Again, in the early days when there was, there was very limited staff or no staff and lots of involvement by all the member and board and sort of the more of the operational work. That roster was shared in a Google Drive with everyone. But I guess, is that what you're suggesting, Joe? Have all member reps have a document that lists all other member reps and contact information?
Yeah, I don't know if we can discuss whether that should be public or not, but the other day I was looking for mine. I had to go back to my JPA just to see the late, to make sure that I was on there and who else was on there from Newmarket.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll chime in a couple things. Henry started to pick it up, but in the report that's going to be issued as part of the annual meeting, there's going to be a page dedicated to that. And then, we're going to have a digital version as well. But going beyond that, there has been some discussions at the MOEC level as making like an exclusive part of our .org website for members to access, which could have some sort of portal that shared, contact information for all the member reps and alternates. So that's one idea, where we could basically take some of what's in our roster and make it available to everyone.
Yeah, I suspect like Newmarket that a lot of places don't keep theirs up to date. as people go on and off the town councils and whatever.
Carol, did you want to jump in?
I'm so, no, I just said I think it's a good idea to have something like that because I suspect that a lot of towns, places like Newmarket, don't always keep theirs up to date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Carol, you have your hand up. I don't know if it's left over, if it's current.
No, sorry, and it took me a while to unmute. I'm kind of jumping around with my questions, but going through your transition plan, there's a lot of upheaval with change. And what support do you need from those of us that are residents of the different towns and members of CPCH to um, help facilitate the transition that we're going through? How can we help you?
It's a good question. I have a couple of thoughts, and I'm curious if other folks on staff have thoughts. But definitely let us know what what is it like on the ground in your community with your select board, are folks aware? Are they interested? Do they have questions? Do they have concerns? I think that information is really good to have. I would say I hope we'll have a really good turnout at the annual meeting when the members get to come together and participate there. I think that's an important touch point. And to the extent that member reps serve on committees or attend meetings like this, just like having your participation, letting us know like where are things at from your perspective, I think is really helpful. I'm curious if anyone else wants to comment on this.
But before I go on mute, I just wanted to follow up with that theme. It would be interesting to know how many opt-outs we got when the rates changed, to give us a flavor of that. I know that our selectmen in Hampton Falls were very supportive of HB 7760, and we sent a letter, but there's some apprehension that wasn't there before the rate change. So once the membership and outreach team has time to look at that, it would be helpful for us to know then, and I'll sign off.
I think where Jackson just flashed through that report, you might have noticed that the opt-action reports for April the 1st were included. And Scott provides us with a report. We're kept up to date with things weekly, but monthly through MOEC. And I don't want to try to speak off the cuff from memory, but his overall report was that we were not seeing any significant or worrying trends in that regard. Would that be a fair summary, Jackson?
Yeah, I agree, Andrew. I mean, we did see a bit like attrition spiked a bit right after the rate change, but has since really seemed to level off back to more normal levels. In some of the recent weekly reports we've gotten from Calpine, there actually have been sort of more activities that have resulted in opt-ins than opt-outs from, customer initiations. So that's reversing the trend we were seeing for a number of weeks where, opt-outs were exceeding opt-ins. Of course, there are other factors affecting the numbers, right? We paused refreshes for some time due to the rate. So we're going to have to sort of consider how to approach that moving forward. But hopefully that provides some helpful context. But I'd encourage you to explore those reports from Scott and follow up with any specific questions.
And if I could just get to the other point that Carol was making, and it's greatly appreciated, Carol, and you are in the minority in terms of your level of engagement. The challenge that we have is expectations of engagement have to be a very broad spectrum. we do want to make sure that we are proactively following up with all of our members. And Jackson and I have been working on a prioritization list. And frankly, why you haven't heard from me on that note is because you are here in this meeting. Others have been a little AWOL, and we're working along progressively to ensure that we are more proactive and more responsive. It's just another example of growth. We are on a pause in terms of growth, in terms of membership and launches. And so it is giving us time to take a breath and engage with 42 communities that launched just last year. I'll tell you that I have been surprised in a very positive way that no news, it's not necessarily bad news. The folks who have gotten back to me in the last week or two have impressed me. I've tried to be a little proactive in my outreach, not so much as just sending a "how you doing" and putting it on them, but taking the time and trouble to look at people's websites, to municipal websites, make sure that we're aware of the minutes of energy committees. And that's surprised me. And I've been sending kudos letters to say, you did present to your select board with our annual report. I'm not complaining you didn't tell us, but I didn't know until I found out myself. And way to go, guys. And I am feeding that information back to our member services group on a weekly basis because we're always learning about how we can be better. And we are getting better, but it's a process. I don't believe that the season that we've just gone through of town meeting has been as adverse as we were wondering about. Certainly, some communities have expressed concerns, but many of our energy committees, even without us knowing, are holding the line and talking very positively. And then 2 days ago, we send out Poverty Plains notification, and people pop out of the woodwork everywhere, getting very excited about something we're doing. So I'm very encouraged by that, if that's any help.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I think when you go through a challenge, you can come out stronger, and I'm convinced that we're going to see that with CPCNH. At least I'd like to support that. I want to go back to a comment that was made because I didn't follow it completely. To find out the opt-out reports, you go to through to the committee documents, and then there's opt-out action reports. And the most recent one that I see is August of last year. So help me figure this out again.
Yeah, so thanks, Carol, for that feedback. I need to work with Scott on trying to keep those specific reports in that portion of the key documents portal more up to date. But they are included as part of the MOEC materials on a monthly basis, and then also make it into the board packets. So certainly through onboard, you can find it. But we'll try to make sure that we get those in here as well. So it looks like Henry's pulled it up.
So can you go back? Yes, onboard is another quagmire I'm slowly learning, and I finally got access maybe a week ago. You go to About Us, and then what's the next step?
About Us, key documents.
Documents.
And then when you go to key documents, you go down to this public, and
Yep.
there's a community reports. It's the second one.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and then just one more step. So you get in there, and there's community benefit, and there's opt action. Now we're one of our action items is revamping the community benefit reports. That is not been completed as of yet, but opt action reports I think is a good, and we're up through Feb 1 as of now, and here are the results from that.
Yeah, we have a more recent report actually, but we'll get that onto this portal page so it's easier to access than going through onboard as well,
Did-
Carol.
Thank you for walking me through that. I appreciate it very much.
Paul.
Yeah, there is a suggestion too. At some point, we could maybe have an office hour session where we talk through how to access various materials through our website and how to navigate onboard a little bit better to find certain things. And certainly something that Nick's been helpful with, but that we're putting more attention on is just the organization of all of our materials more broadly. So I think that's a place that we can ever be improving, and we'll be working on it.
Did you want to jump in, Paul?
Yeah, thanks for that, Andrew and Jackson. Jackson, I just wanted to make you aware, I'm not sure what the situation with Onboard is, but I mean, I do have access through the portal and I have been looking at a lot of these documents, but I don't have access to Onboard being just a member. I'm not a member of the board and I don't know who Onboard is supposed to be available to, so you might keep that in mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just, you want to respond, Jackson? Or I'll jump in. So, yeah, Onboard's been a really good tool for the board and committee work, but we have had some challenges in that it's not necessarily, it's designed for a perhaps less transparent entity. So we are having internal discussions on how can we make sure we're being effective in having an organized platform for board and committee materials and work, while also making that entirely accessible to all the member reps of the public more broadly. So it's a good point, and that's an ongoing discussion we're having. Very good. Mark turned his camera on a little bit. I don't know if Mark wanted to chime in, or maybe he's all good.
Sure, yeah. So I was just gonna kind of jump in on Carol's question about how member reps can help, and I just wanted to kind of build on what Andrew said. The other day we sent out a email about the Poverty Plains solar project and the subscription opportunities there, and I'm greatly appreciative of the member representatives' help in kind of passing that information along to the municipal accounts in your communities. So this is a project that has a very specific type of entity that's able to participate, and you all are, closer to those folks than we are. So I think that's just a great example of how the member representatives can jump in and help us with what we're trying to do on the staff side. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Good segue to, Mark has been leading the Poverty Plains project development. Last month, the board approved sort of one half of that project, in that there is a group net metering agreement between CPCNH and the municipal accounts to enable those municipal accounts to subscribe and receive bill credits or compensation for being associated with that project to lower or offset their energy costs. There's still a power purchase agreement. Mark has done a evaluation of that power purchase agreement. Our power resources team, the folks at Ascend, have just completed their valuation as well. We're going to be presenting that to the risk management committee on Monday, in addition to some other agenda items. So good forward progress on what could be the first sort of steel on the ground 5 megawatt solar project that CPCNH enables to be developed. And that project, wouldn't come online until, what is it, late 2026? When is it, Mark? Sorry.
Summer 26.
Summer 26. Thank you. But anyway, and again, not approved, but the power purchase agreement and valuation have to go through risk committee and then board approval. Our analysis, Mark's analysis, Ascend's analysis, I think clarifies there's good value in this project, and we'll be presenting those details to the risk committee. Other action plan items, starting a couple of weeks ago, Ascend kicked off Wednesday Power Sim trainings for the risk management committee and staff and others who are interested. Power Sim is Ascend Analytics software platform that they use to run probabilistic forecasting of the load. And I'm not the best person at describing those details, but there's been some really good training to sort of build the internal capacities of CPCNH staff and the committee to improve our ability to function as a team and to have the committee provide the oversight role for risk. Additionally, we will be having I think a full day board training on enterprise risk management, once the new board is elected by all of you at the annual meeting. Sort of just a return to get grounded in the risk policy. And let's see, just to maybe foreshadow some other project program items. We did develop an annual rate, and we have, I think, a good number of accounts participating in that. And some of the work of projects and programs over the coming months will be to firm up our cost assessments or cost modeling, cost to serve large customer accounts, and to really enable good pricing and programs for those large accounts. And maybe we'll just tease or preview that now. And I don't know that we have much more detail to report at present, but again, sort of laying a foundation for diversifying innovative rates, innovative program offerings for customers. Okay. And then, yeah, regulatory, legislative. I mean, Dina gives these great updates mostly twice monthly. The status, I'll try to do a quick status summary, but we had a number of bills CPCNH was supporting. Those bills were tabled by the House, which keeps them alive and enables that they could be considered later this session or in the next session. And meanwhile, the regulatory process is playing out. I guess the bills are maybe in two categories. One being the House Bill 760, prevent utilities from moving supply costs onto the delivery side of the bill and forcing non-utility supply customers to subsidize utility supply losses. And then the other category being perhaps Energy Forward Act, the necessary market reforms to enable local energy projects, to enable community power to serve net metered customers and source our power from rooftops within our towns, which seems like it would make sense being that we're community power. And the other more innovative distributed energy, distributed generation, and load flexibility that we know can be sort of an efficient way to develop New Hampshire's energy economy from the bottom up. So there are reforms that are needed to data access, price signal availability, load settlement. I'm not going to try to go into all the weeds of that, but we have legislation to enable that structurally. That has been put on the table. And then there are the regulatory proceedings. And it's sort of one way to think of this might be we have to play defense on the cost shift issue, and then we can maybe get into a more offensive place where we're enabling local markets, local power markets for communities and customers. So yeah, I'm a little reluctant to try to do cover for Dina and the updates she does so well. But again, the major update currently is the testimony in Eversource's stranded cost recovery case. There is a similar docket on Unitil's cost shift proposal that we're engaged in. And those are some of the major ones at present. And I think we've had great, really appreciative of all the members for weighing in, the letters you've written, the support for the bills, the participation, and we'll be maintaining that momentum. So that's perhaps a rough summary. And yeah, I don't know if there's other questions or comments or things folks would like to address.
No, thank you, Henry Jackson. Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
I have a quick comment. First of all, check out the chat. There's some great resources in there. I'm going to drop one last link in there. Hopefully you saw the quarterly update newsletter. We're collecting story ideas for, I'll make this quick, Ken. We're collecting story ideas for content within that newsletter and elsewhere. So I put in the chat a form that you can submit your story ideas or information on what's happening around community power within your communities. Thanks.
I see a question from Ken in the chat. If CPCNH loses the cost shift issue, what does that mean for the future of CPCNH? Good question. I will say that if utilities are allowed to systematically underprice their supply rates and give the illusion that supply costs are less than they are by moving those supply costs into the delivery side of the bill, it's structurally anti-competitive, and CPCNH cannot compete with structurally anti-competitive rates. So what does that mean for the future of CPCNH? I can't say for certain, but I think it's a critical issue, and I have good confidence that CPCNH will prevail on this because it is so. I think like on the merits, it's so clear, and if the regulators go off the rails here, I think it's fair for me to say that CPCNH is prepared to take it to the courts. And again, just like from a merits and policy perspective, it's very clear, and I have good confidence that we will prevail. And part of that will be, ensuring that we're empowering the members to weigh in and to participate and have their voices heard. So it's clear that like it's unacceptable to have an anti-competitive market structure. That would be my response. Paul.
Yeah, Henry, how would you compare the significance of that to the load settlement issues, which is, before the cost shifting thing came up, load settlement was the big issue that I had been concerned with.
Yeah, so load settlement is really about let's make sure we are valuing the local energy resources accurately. So if a solar array or a battery is providing power from the bottom up to the distribution grid, they're creating value. That value is load reduction. Load reduction means an offset to the wholesale energy cost, the wholesale capacity cost, the transmission cost of Eversource's interstate transmission lines. If you're producing power locally, you are directly reducing those costs. And it matters when you produce it, and we can measure that with meters and, understand that. Load settlement is about, right now that value is created, but it is socialized across the full system as opposed to enabling the creator of that value, that battery project, or an aggregator of someone who supplies 5,000 net metered accounts like we do to source some of our power from those net metered accounts and offset the energy capacity transmission costs we otherwise pay. There's no mechanism for us to get the value that load reduction or local solar or local batteries provide. So load settlement is about enabling that market. So it's more sort of offensive. How do we create a better market structure, a more efficient market structure? And we can function. The cost shift issue is like, can we compete on a level playing field with the utilities? The load settlement issue is, can we actually drive more energy innovation and better services for customers?
Okay, so the cost shift could be an existential risk, whereas load settlement, not so much.
I think that's fair. Just another finding from the regulatory case. So Samuel Golding filed expert witness testimony on behalf of CPCNH in that docket. Cliff also filed testimony. And in Samuel's testimony, he built a cost model to estimate the actual cost of Eversource power for the rate period. They set a proxy price. They guess that it's going to cost them 8.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And then they see what the market gives them over the 6-month period because they have 30% exposure now. Samuel's cost model predicted that during the month of February, Eversource would have suffered a $5.2 million loss. In testimony in this proceeding, Eversource has revealed that their actual losses for February were $5.7 million. which validates and justifies Samuel's math and the model he has constructed, shown it to be a good and accurate model, and shown that we're correct. They are the rate underprices costs. There is a higher likelihood of losses, and if those losses are allowed to be socialized, that's anti-competitive. So again, this is all coming out in like the technical work of this proceeding, where it's becoming more and more clear. CPCNH was right. We've been justified in our forecasts. We are the technical experts, and I think our position is becoming stronger.
That's an interesting fact that would be good to include in your little note there, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joe. I think there's a clear need for us to take the last maybe week of findings on the regulatory proceeding, put it in an article, and be able to really get the key points out to everyone, because it can be hard to sift through all of that, and it's definitely a priority that we'll work on.
When are the PUC hearings scheduled for?
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would think May. Right. And I think this is
Also, too, you might want to mention one of the PUC directors has excused himself from proceedings.
Yes, thank you, Joe. So Commissioner Mark Delorfano has recused himself from a number of proceedings CPCNH has been involved with. CPCNH has also filed petitions calling for his recusal based on ethical violations and based on him demonstrating he is unable to perform his duty impartially or in unbiased fashion due to public remarks he made actually in the town of Bedford. I think Chris may have gotten off the call. But essentially, Commissioner Delorfano made untrue and perhaps disparaging remarks about CPCNH and community power broadly in a public meeting, and has been recusing himself from a number of dockets to which we participate in. And there's an article that Andrew Hatch has just put in the chat that everyone might be interested to read. Yeah, I think Don Kreese does a nice job of sort of describing the credibility crisis in some of the state energy agencies, and the information's in that article. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Nice to see everybody. Appreciate the discussion.
And so the next one is scheduled for the day after the annual meeting, correct, Henry? The 25th?
Yeah, that is correct.